Welcome children. Today we are going to start the third chapter of history for standard 9th, Nazism and the rise of Hitler. Now children, before I begin the lesson, let us revise the types of government that you have learned earlier. Mainly these two types, democracy and dictatorship. Now what is democracy? Democracy is a type of government in which the people of the country, who are all adults, have the right to vote to elect their representatives. Then these representatives form the government and they work for the welfare of the people. Okay, and if they don't work for the welfare of the people, then they are voted out and re-elections are held. So they are accountable to the people and it is the rule of the people. Now what happens in a dictatorship? It is a form of government in which one person has the absolute authority over a country. That means whatever he orders has to be followed. So there is no freedom of speech, okay, no enjoyment. The opposition is banned. You cannot talk against the government. So that is a dictatorship government. So we are going to learn how Germany, from being a democratic form of government, turns into a dictatorship government. Now the lesson starts with a small story. In 1945, a 11-year-old German boy called Helmut was lying in bed when he overheard his parents' conversation. His father, who was a famous physician, was telling his wife that the time has come to kill the entire family or he himself should commit suicide alone. And Helmut heard this dialogue very clearly. It says, "Now the Allies will do to us what we did to the crippled and the Jews." The next day he took Helmut to the woods where they spent their last happy time together. Later, Helmut's father shot himself in the office, and Helmut remembers to see his father's bloody uniform being burnt in the family fireplace. Helmut was so traumatized that he refused to eat at home for 9 years, as he was afraid that his mother might poison him. Helmut was not aware that his father was a Nazi and a supporter of Adolf Hitler. Now all of us have probably heard about Hitler or the word Nazi at least once in our lifetime. Now who was Hitler and what did he do? Who is a Nazi? How did Nazism come into existence? Yes, let us journey back into time and understand the reasons for the rise of Hitler. Adolf Hitler wanted Germany to become a mighty superpower, and his ambition was to conquer the entire Europe. He was the leader of the Germans' Nazi Party, one of the most powerful and notorious dictators of the 20th century. He was responsible for the dreaded Holocaust. What is the meaning of Holocaust? Mass killing, especially of Jews, that we are going to learn as we go ahead in the chapter. He was a short and petite man who terrorized the world through his dictatorial practices. Finally committed suicide. Why? Now to understand Hitler's rise to power and its sudden decline, it is necessary that we understand the economic and social conditions of Germany post First World War. Germany, a powerful empire in the early 20th century, ruled by Emperor Kaiser William II. He wanted Germany to become a world power or superpower by crippling Russia and France. So in order to achieve this, he decided to join hands with the Austrian Empire. Germany joined hands with the Austrian Empire to fight against the Allies. Now, who were the Allies? They were France, England, and Russia. Now, all of them joined the war hoping to gain quick victory. But little did they realize that this war will continue for a longer time, and that led to the First World War. Now, the First World War continued for a very long time. It started in 1914 and carried on till 4 years, till finally in 1918. And this war eventually drained Europe of all its resources. In the initial phase of the First World War, Germany made certain gains. It occupied parts of France and Belgium. In 1917, US joined the Allies, and this strengthened the power of the Allies, and with the help of USA, they were able to defeat Germany and the Central Powers, and therefore Germany suffered huge losses in this war. Now, Germany lost the First World War, and in 1918 the Emperor of Germany had to give up his throne. The word used in your book is abdication, which means he had to give up his throne. Now, when the emperor gave up his throne, it gave an opportunity for all the parliamentary parties in Germany to form a government. The political parties meet at Weimar, a small place in Germany, where they decide to form the National Assembly in order to govern the country. And this, they called it as the Weimar Republic. And that is why it is called as the birth of Weimar Republic. After the First World War, when the king gave up his throne, the political parties met together and decided on how to run the government, which led to the birth of the Weimar Republic. Weimar from the place. Now the Weimar Republic framed the constitution for Germany, and they decided that they would have a democratic kind of government and run the country on democratic lines, and also have a federal structure. What is a federal structure? Like in India, the country is divided into states. Similarly, the Germany would be divided into states, and the states would have their own government. Now, since Germany opted for a democratic rule, now the deputies were to be elected to the German parliament, and the German parliament was called as Riksdag. Okay, like we had Duma, in German parliament is called as Riksdag. And how are they going to be elected? Yes, the people of the country were going to vote. Now, elections of the deputies were held on the basis of equal and universal vote cast by all adults who were 20 and above, including women. So all the elected representatives who were elected would sit in the German parliament known as Riksdag. Now, after the monarch left the throne, the Weimar Republic really worked hard and brought in a lot of changes in the country, and they really worked towards the progress of the country. They changed the system of government, which was a monarchy, now had become a democratic country. Voting rights were given to everyone, and there was a new frame of constitution that they brought in with the federal structure. But this Weimar Republic was not received very well by the people of the country. Why? Let's learn about it. The First World War ended in 1918, and Germany lost the war. And after the defeat in the war, it was made to sign a humiliating peace treaty on harsh terms by the Allies at Versailles. Now, where is Versailles? It is a place in France. So, the Weimar Republic was called to Versailles, where they signed this treaty, and that is why this treaty is called as the Treaty of Versailles. Now, the German people held the Weimar Republic responsible not only for the defeat in the war but also for accepting and signing this humiliating treaty on such harsh terms. The Weimar Republic had no other options but to accept and sign the treaty. Now let us see what were the harsh terms that the Germans had to accept. Now, with the signing of the Treaty of Versailles, Germany lost its overseas colonies. It also lost 10% of its population, 13% of its territories, 75% of its iron, 26% of its coal to Poland, France, Denmark, and Lithuania. The Allies wanted to weaken the German power, so they demilitarized their army so that they don't again form an army and again have a war with them. Now, as you know, Germany had signed the peace treaty of Versailles, and in that treaty there was a clause called the war guilt clause. Now, this clause held Germany responsible for the war and for the losses that it caused to the Allied countries. So, Germany was forced to pay £6 billion to the Allies. Now the Allied powers also occupied Rhineland, which was a rich and resourceful area filled with iron, rich iron here. So you see, children, with the signing of the Treaty of Versailles, Germany lost its territories, and with the territories it's lost its people, its resources, and its pride. So this was actually one of the reasons for the rise of Hitler. Now the First World War had a devastating effect on the entire European continent. Let us look into it. Now the first effect that we see of the war is it had a devastating impact both psychologically and financially to Europe. Now the second impact that we see is Europe, which was once a continent of creditors, is to give money to people, has now turned into a continent of debtors, that it means it had to borrow money. Now the Weimar Republic had signed the peace treaty of Versailles on very harsh terms, and the people of Germany held the Weimar Republic responsible for signing such a humiliation treaty where they had to suffer huge losses. Now the Weimar Republic felt guilty about it for bringing about national humiliation, and also financially Germany being crippled, for they had to pay huge compensation for the war losses. Now the socialists, the Catholics and Democrats who were in support of the Weimar Republic were attacked by the people, and they were mocked at, and they were called as November criminals, because the people felt that they were the ones who signed this harsh treaty and negotiated with the Allies to bring an end to the First World War. The First World War had a deep impact on the European society also. The soldiers were given more importance than the civilians. The politicians stressed that every man should be aggressive, strong, and masculine, and every man should become a soldier and join the army. They also claimed that the man's life in the army was much better. The media and the press also glorified the life of a soldier, but that was not true. The soldier lived a miserable life in the trenches, okay, and then they were trapped with rats, feeding on dead bodies. They faced poisonous gases and enemy shelling. So actually you see, although they glorified the life of a soldier, but it was not easy being a soldier, and lot of war propaganda was done, and lot of talk about winning back the national honor was done by the media. So all this was glorified, and people started looking that yes, now was the time that they needed a change in the government, and that is where the idea of conservative dictatorship started growing in the country. So you see, children, after the First World War, a very hostile situation had developed in Germany. The economic problems led the people to condemn the Weimar Republic, and there was a rise now in political change, and that's where we see the rise of the Nazi Party. With this, we come to the end of part 1 of this chapter, Nazism and Rise of Hitler. In my next video, we'll discuss about the economic problems and the Great Depression. Till then, stay tuned, do view and subscribe. Thank you.